Professor.
What is geospatial science?
It's about surveying a location, also basically to do with mapping, and also basically to do with cartography as well.
And we're live today on Imagine Fitting In with Ian Darmawan. I pronounced that correct, Ian?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So welcome, Ian. Imagine Fitting In podcast is all about mentors, healthy lives, and community. And we know that those three things they're vital ingredients for, productive lives to kind of support the betterment of our society, our communities. And I like to highlight interesting people such as yourself that I found you online on Facebook. And Ian and I have a mutual interest and passion, and I'm sure includes photography itself. But Ian and I are both drone pilots, remote drone pilots. And I think, Ian, that most listeners, they've heard all kinds of things, and you've heard the stories on, are you spying on me, and don't fly over my house. If I see you, I'm going to shoot you down with my gun, all that kind of stuff. So, I always have to remember, I'm not sure about you when you talk to the average citizen, right? Educating them about drones, that the fact that they are very highly legally regulated with airspace, and we literally have to know as much as manned pilots. We have to be respectful of that airspace because, of course, we know all our listeners and people that fly in airplanes. You want to feel safe, and there's no drones, right, getting in your way as you fly to go see grandma wherever, right? So anyway, Ian, I usually start basically, where were you born? Where do you call home today? And what was your upbringing like, what your parents did?
Yeah, so basically I'm born in Jakarta, which is in Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Australia and currently living in Melbourne. And basically my mother used to be a accountant, not anymore, but my father also runs a civil engineering business at the moment too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sorry, your mother does what?
She used to be an accountant.
Okay. And your father's an engineer. What type of engineer is your father?
Civil.
Okay. So
he runs a civil engineering business. Yeah.
Nice. So I'm going to try to remind myself. I remember, I think my cousin was a civil engineer. This is all about kind of almost urban planning, right? And environmental.
Oh, well, it's probably more to do with soil testing and pavement testing. Yeah, the foundational parts.
Right. All those little nitty-gritty details when something goes up around us and we go, "Oh, look at that." And
That's right.
Yeah, all those details have to be managed. Okay. And so you call Melbourne, Australia your home today?
Yes, that's right.
Nice. And now how old were you when you came to Australia, or were you
I came when I was around the age of 6 years old after living in Singapore for a few years and living in Indonesia for a few years as well.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay. And then so, obviously this is all about trying to track down and tell a history of your experiences. And so obviously your first, your school participation, obviously we remember mostly probably into like in elementary school. Now, did you have in elementary school when you were of right age, what, 6, 7, 8, whatever, do you remember like wanting to be a pilot, or what were your interests, or what was that elementary school experience like for you?
I think primary school was more of opportunity for me to look into. I love mapping. I wouldn't say I wanted to be a pilot, I suppose, but I love mapping, basically being able to draw maps, look at maps, and also being able to. I also love mathematics. I also love general knowledge, a bit of geography,
Mm-hmm.
a bit of science as well. So I loved a bit of everything back then.
Right. Well, you just describing all, mapping and actually creating a map. I grew up and sometimes I have a hard time just reading a map, let alone thinking I'm going to create one that's accurate. So, obviously we definitely need people of such your passion, because now, we kind of getting a little bit, we're so automated. I mean, I remember back in the day when I was young, we'd take a road trip from Ohio to Florida, and it would be like, okay, pull the map out. We're going through Kentucky or Georgia, and we're gonna have to figure out where we're at, right? And so that was always interesting. What I remember a personal story, Ian, that I remember my cousin, who I told you was a civil engineer. I remember back, he was super fascinated by the maps, and he always read them, and we were on like mile marker, or whatever. So he was on it. So, and so anyway, so the interest in mapping. So you're probably pretty good drawing with like the old school pen and paper and all that kind of stuff.
Probably is that kind of thing. I think these days what I do is I use this software called ArcGIS Pro or QGIS,
Mm-hmm.
where I analyze the maps. Well, I analyze patterns from open data or
Mm-hmm.
from drone mapping. Actually, being able to stitch them together. Also, look into how we can make 3D models as well. But back then, yes, I love mapping through drawing that and being able to see how the phenomena works, especially not only just in primary school, but actually more in high school,
Got it.
where you use tracing paper to actually create different kinds of layers, like contours,
Right.
coloring pencils to actually color off phenomena as well. Yeah.
Oh, nice. I mean, I was
Mm.
a commercial artist back in the day before I got into my present main profession, as I've been a fitness professional for over 30 years.
Mm.
But I consider my essence, I'm an artist, but my passion has been fitness. And my journey into getting into flying drones were after COVID. The fitness industry took a hit, and I was always interested in photography. I've been shooting photography ever since. You may not have even heard these cameras, but there used to be a camera called a Browning, and that's one of the
Mm.
first early commercial cameras where it had you open up the top and you look down, and the image was in reverse to you, and you literally
Yep.
had to compose the image upside down, and very old school. So I was inspired to go, hey, well, if I'm going to go back to school, if I'm going to have more camera skills, why don't I try to make myself even more marketable by putting the camera in the sky?
Mm.
And so I decided I was going to learn the drone, and I went to this fantastic UAS program here, Unmanned Aerial Systems at Sinclair College, which is one of the very great, strong program here in Dayton, Ohio, which as I mentioned, the home of aviation and the Wright brothers. That was my birthplace. So was there anyone, any teacher in elementary school that saw your gifts and your interests that helped you, support you, or encourage you along the way?
In terms of the teachers, I probably had one or two teachers, but it wasn't so much that they were encouraging me to pursue my careers,
Mm-hmm.
because I think what the focus was really just
Just
doing what they could in the curriculum that they had to teach.
getting
I would
prepared.
probably say it's more to do with like when you're in high school.
Okay.
That's when they start to prepare you a little more, and
Right. Right.
it's because they're the ones who are they're actually more relevant to what you want to do to build out your early time in uni, your early time in to create your careers, that sort
Right.
of thing, you know. So actually, it was really more the people at high school, like geography teachers,
Did you
my
have
career counselors. Yeah.
did you have any teacher that you remember that really made a difference, or counselors?
There's probably like who was it? My co-teacher, because basically my senior high school, I went to a science school which was based in a university um, that was called John Monash Science School in Monash University,
Mm-hmm.
and basically um, that was in Melbourne, and at that time, my co-teacher, well, we had this team teaching situation where you have two teachers and 50 students, and I learned so much from people like my personal personalized learning teacher,
Uh-huh.
who spoke about how you create pathways from the subjects you're going to study in year 11 and year 12, and also looking into um, also my co-teacher, who was also teaching with him, and then subsequently she became my co-teacher again in my 11th grade, along with my main geography teacher. So what I mean by co-teachers, basically, it was like a team teaching situation.
Sure.
We've got two teachers and 50 students, but one of the teachers was the one who marked your work, but both of them teach together. So
Got it.
you know, that co-teacher didn't mark my work, but she was also teaching with the teacher who marked my work. So
Now, do you remember?
learning from both of them, and also in year 11 where I learned accelerated geography,
There you go.
and also my careers counselor, um, I was able to see what kind of career paths would take me to where I needed to be based on the subjects that I have. And
Mm-hmm.
thankfully, the subjects that I did, yeah, and the score that I had, uh, sort of was more flexible for me to get to the university course that I needed to go to, you know,
Yeah.
which was geospatial science.
Okay. Now, what were there? Do you remember? It sounds like you had the one that was with you for a couple different years or whatever. Do you remember? It was a female. What was their name?
I think it was, there were a few, like in year 10, 10th grade was Chris Hart, Mr. Hart, and then now he works for Google.
Okay.
Um, you've also got Miss Adriana Abels, who is the geography humanities teacher, also global politics teacher.
Okay.
Back then, she was head of humanities.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got Miss Jess Weifschneider, Miss Hergott, and you also got what's the name? Kirsten Carter from a careers counselor's perspective as well.
Right.
Yeah, but
That's awesome.
mm,
So a shout out to Chris Carter at Google, and
no, Chris Hart, Chris Hart,
I'm
Chris
sorry.
Hart. Yeah.
Shout out to Chris Hart at Google. Google, if you're listening, Chris Hart. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, it's a shout out. So, all right. So like you're in school, the counselors are supporting your efforts. You pretty much had an idea then? Like when did you come, like when you were in school, did you come to a point like you knew exactly the kind of the pinpoint direction, or you knew a general idea like, hey, this is where I'm headed?
I guess it was more of a general idea because I wanted to do other things like engineering. I wanted to do like a science course or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, this was the path that would lead to where I didn't know where I was heading until I was at my later stage of university course, you know, like probably in the third and fourth years.
Sure.
I felt I wanted to more or less, at one point, develop and create a business, because I don't believe that working for others, if you worked for others long term,
Mm-hmm.
um, would serve me well. I personally, I like to help people broadly, not just be in a box where it's a 9 to 5 and do a specific thing. That is just not me.
Right. So it sounds like, I will, Ian, I will agree with you 100%. On my own journey, I always told myself that, I don't want to get myself in a position. Number one, I want to try to find out what I'm passionate about. Number two, I really prefer not to have to work for such a large organization that, oh gosh, you're doing great if you're doing something you love. And then also, I never want to get in a position where somebody else had all the strings to my overall well-being and my investment. So I thought, well, if it's going to be tough, which life is not necessarily easy, we come across challenges in our life, in all aspects of our life, in work, career related. And I'm 100% agreement with you in terms of that attitude of like, okay, I'm going to work hard. Hey, everything's risky, so why don't I risk being in charge and having that control? So I applaud you on that recognition. And it sounds like to me, Ian, that you may have a little bit of teaching passion, because I hear you wanted to share your knowledge. So, did you ever had any experiences like so far in your life that anything significant, like life changing experiences, other than school, that kind of like cemented your thoughts on that?
Look, that's an interesting question because there were so many people who made an influence. The first one is my parents because they're the ones who always told me to take every opportunity as it comes. My father started a business in times of you know, when he needed to be more financially stable in Australia.
Sure.
And my mother, and also my father was able to help me push further, more than just the things I just study at school. Like I went on to study a little more than just my own level. My mother always taught me the basics
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that I have to do certain things to be good enough. And my younger brother also being able to challenge. He had this capacity to be more highly academic in what he had to do, and being successful in you know competitions as well. But then there's also like others, like in the church. There used to be these two people, like my ex-parish priest,
Mm-hmm.
called Father Pat, who always taught me the important thing is to have servant leadership. When I mean servant leadership, it's like you love one another, you
Right.
you follow Jesus, that
Your
kind of
your
thing.
your
And
your fellow man and humanity, right? Of respecting.
yeah, yeah, that's right. And back then, back in those days, in in you know during 2006 towards 2011 was that year when my father started the business. I started to go to this church called St. Christopher's, where I met Father Pat, and also my Sunday school teacher named Sister Joyce Shelley, who taught Sunday school. And time again, they both Sister Joy and Father Pat have always taught me the importance of loving one another, having forgiveness, and being a leader in what you do. And when I talk servant everyday leadership, I don't mean being a slave or anything. It's more like you help people in the things that they need, or the things that they do. They need to do, like washing the feet of others, biblically speaking, but then also being
Right.
able to help people in the times of difficulty. So,
Sure. Sure.
helping someone who is in the face of having stage 4 cancer, helping someone with a disability, and also helping people who are stressed, you
Right.
know, or helping people find their purpose in dating, or helping people in personal development, or whether it's math, English, or whatnot, or science, STEM. I always believe that helping them to where they need to be is the best way for them to succeed, and the best way for me to succeed. So it's basically a win-win situation, but it's also about even the person who leads our Bible study group always told me we are temporary residents in this world, and it is up to God to determine how we do things for people that will be allowing us to be accepted into heaven. That kind of thing.
I tell you, that's very well said and well spoken, my man. So I give you props. You're gonna do masterful, wonderful things in this world. I can just tell. You've got a great head on your shoulders. It sounds like you have some great mentors. Obviously, your parents are the foundation of all that. Ian, what would you consider like your first job experience or fulfillment of doing a task for somebody, and you got paid for it, or compensated for that effort? What was that? What was that experience like?
I think it's just basically like it's just your typical day to day, where I think there were so many of them. I worked for my family business first, but then I've also worked for other companies as well, which were not associated with my parents. So learning about such things like being able to understand customers' expectation, being able to check whether after doing like a specific part of the whole task, that you're on the right track, and then doing the rest of the work. Being able to serve the client is always the important thing. So that's why I learned also
number one, right?
Yeah. So again, that comes down to that servant leadership, which I just spoke about. So no matter if you're a worker, an employer, no matter if you are a boss or in middle management, or no matter if you're an entrepreneur, you always got to serve a client, because if you don't serve the client well, you lose the client, and your reputation can get affected,
right?
Whether you're an employee, the value as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I always believe that it all comes back to what I learned in Christianity, but and also what I've learned in day-to-day life. Just doing what you can, and it's really also like a sport, right? Like if you think about playing tennis, playing soccer, or whatnot. You've got to focus on the ball. You got to focus on the team. You've got to focus on your training. Do the things right, and that's all you can do. Some matches you win, some matches you lose.
Right.
Even if you lose, there's always a learning opportunity to do better. So that's why I always tell people, especially if they're feeling down, especially if people are feeling down, that you think of it as a sport, and look, I see this time and time again with friends, especially in Asian cultures, where they're worried about, they have to advance their career progression because their parents are basically pressuring them. And I tell them,
high expectations.
Yes, high expectations, but I've always told them, you got to do what you can, like a sport. You just don't think about that. You focus on that. It works. If it will just work out. If it doesn't work out, there'll be always other ways of how you're going to get there.
Right. So
yeah.
I will tell you, as you mentioned, it's in business, Ian. I found it's definitely the details, and for you to be successful, listening to the client, their needs, and all that, right? So in business, details matter, right? It comes down. That's why they're hiring you to think of all the details in the scenario, give them, deliver the best outcome. It's almost similar in relationships. In business, it's the details. In relationships, especially with a partner, a spouse, or whatever. It's the little things. It's the little things that day to day that, relationship, it's more of a continual compromise, I believe. In business, it's the details that definitely matter. And that, if you can, along with delivering, and then also being a kind, considerate, informative, and compassionate person, they're going to want to spend time with you, and they're going to say, okay, I like this guy, he delivers, and I enjoy being with him, because you're going to just make their day and their life experience, as they do their tasks that they have to get done, all the better. So have you had anyone who you consider right now as your main mentor, or someone who's really kind of empowering you with any kind of opportunities lately?
I think so far, in terms of opportunities, I mean, in terms of people who provide opportunities, mentoring, my father always gives me the best, because he's a business person and he brings me to kind of different courses as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and to accelerate who I am as an entrepreneur, as a business person, long
Mhm.
term.
Yep.
I mean, right now I'm an employee, but long term as a business person, as an entrepreneur. So he's really good at just trying to tell me this is what you need to focus on, because I did Bachelor of Geospatial Science, but just more recently I completed the Stanford Lead certificate, which he recommended.
Now tell me,
And probably
hold on. Tell me that you said the Stanford what?
Lead, it's like an MBA style course
Okay, and
where it
so
develops on your business leadership skills.
did you do that? Do you do that online? I'm imagining.
Yes, yes, it is all online. Yes.
And Ian, I think I'm curious now that I realize this, and I'm sure listeners would. You sound like you really got a really good head on your shoulders. You're compassionate. You're intelligent. How old are you, Ian?
I'm 28 years old.
Okay.
But I don't look 28 actually. I actually look a little more younger than that
Hey,
actually.
listen. I would tell you something that serves you well. So I will give you example. Okay. All right. If you just look beside my gray beard, how old do you think I am? And then how old is your father?
Um,
What would you guess
I
how
just
old
think
I
you I just think you look around 50 or something.
am? Okay. Well, I'm 61.
Right.
And how old is your dad?
I think he's turning 60. He's turning 60 this year. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm basically your dad's age.
Hmm.
And okay, so yeah, so Ian, what I've shared with my listeners before is, in my experience, is I believe that in your 20s you're supposed to be out there, revving it up, getting into all kinds of things, exploring things and avenues, and then by the time you're 30, if you know what you don't want, it's a good place, and you're even more ahead of the game if you're focused in and you have an idea about where it is that you're going. And so
Hmm.
why why did you have a passion to start a business?
Because what was happening was, um, when I look at family history and when I look at now,
Hmm.
um, my parents were able to help me um, get to where I am, being that they're more financially stable these days, and in times where Australia is not an easy country to live in when it comes to living expenses. So
Okay.
they had to think something about creating that business, but then also even 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 like back then when my father and his sister, um, you know, they also had to serve every day in that little cake store in Indonesia with my
Mm,
grandmother, who's their mother, and they worked hard every day.
sure. He
And from
understands.
that
Yeah.
from that money, my grandmother actually invested in gold, uh, and that allowed both of them to go to university. They weren't they they weren't I wouldn't say that they were extremely poor, but they weren't extremely rich either. But it's more like, they needed something to get them up there.
Sure. Well, you know
Yeah,
what? Your grandma, this is your mom, your dad's mother.
yeah, that's right.
She sounds like a wonderful and very compassionate woman. So,
Mm.
God bless. Um, so now, what kind have you started a business now?
I've been looking at a geospatial consulting business, and I'm also creating a start. That's one business that I'm doing of my own. The other one is probably which may be more likely with myself or with another co-founder, is to create a platform which does digital construction. So, using BIM, using GIS, using drone imagery, all of that combined to actually identify those defects in construction
What does BMI stand for?
projects.
What's
BIM, building information modeling.
Oh,
Yeah,
building information modeling. So
that's right.
this is the data that these high-end cameras and these sensors, what we call them sensors, that
Mm.
can pick up that data and through the wonders of technology, construct.
Yeah. So, like, you'd be able to tag information, propose information, current information about assets in that software.
Mm,
And you'd be able to then, in addition to that, being able to rectify those defects, identify those defects using AI. It's all conceptual, but it's to be proven.
sure. So I imagine, I mean, I know I have a friend who
Hmm.
we we do some drone jobs here and there together. Just to let you know, I'm a little bit more on the creative side in terms of using my drones for marketing commercials, and special events. Um, my buddy is really he's definitely more into the mapping and the we've done some agriculture projects together. I'm a little bit more of the point man network marketing guy and generating some business. And then I know that we're completely comfortable that we can, pretty much take care of any client that comes along. So it's a nice little kind of, I don't want to say it's not necessarily I have a full partnership with them, but we have a nice association that, as you know, the drone industry is, it's been towering and developing on monumental levels in the military and destruction, we know. But there's just so many, like you're saying, right? This conceptual stuff that you guys are talking about working on, it's in the pipeline, and it sounds like you are going to be, a pioneer and on the front in the midst of that development. So that's exciting to hear that you have interest and that you're going to be the next generation, helping us all as societies. Now, how did you start to learn about mapping, and where did it lead you to?
In terms of mapping, it just really came from the jobs that I did in the family business. We had the subsidiary where we focused more on digital engineering,
Hmm.
and I found some projects out there that we could look into, and we use drones in particular for the use of mapping out, like, let's say, agriculture. When I mean agriculture, it's like someone wants to actually do an aerial map of the farm of their own, or it can be like creating a map for emergency purposes in the office, or also looking into ways as to how you can create 3D models of buildings indoor and outdoor,
Hmm.
using drones, but then also using indoor scanning cameras as well. So uh, we, we can see this booming. It's just a matter of capturing more value with other aspects as well.
Mm,
Mm.
mm. Yeah, so I know that when I first started when I was getting involved with local college, Sinclair Community College, in the UAS program, which is fantastic. They mainly focused first on agriculture and public safety, and said that was their focus because that was where most all the job opportunities were in the growth aspect of it. And of course, the side of what I mentioned to you about where I kind of find, because I'm a very creative guy, and so in terms of marketing and image capturing and special events and coverage and whatever. So yeah, I think they were starting to expand. Obviously, it's an ever developing and growing field. So it's exciting on that side. I have a question for you. So how does the FAA here in America, um, quite stiff guidelines. I actually, before I even went to the UAS program in Sinclair, I took a course online, and I went and took my test, and I passed and became a FAA certified drone pilot. Tell me what kind of program does Australia have in terms of, like, okay, you own a drone, you want to start doing commercial business with it. What kind of regulatory oversight do you have in Australia in terms of aviation in the airspace?
There is basically, in terms of Australian regulations, there's exams that you have to take. So there's a RPAS exam where you learn about, the regulations of 101, and that's basically the altitude of which you can fly, where you can't fly, zones which you can and can't
Right.
fly,
Right, airspace, yeah.
zones which are airspace control, you can't fly, and also being able to know the different kinds of weather conditions, like the cloud conditions,
Right.
cumulonimbus or something like that, those cloud types,
Yeah.
and also being able to practice flying a drone in different patterns, like a eight circle, or
Right.
doing a practical exam.
Yes.
But then there's also AROC if you want to fly near airports as well. So learning out about what kind of remote pilot license you need to get with AROC, and that's also a way to do projects which are closer to airports,
Right.
and also being able to do what you call, there's also a drone company, like if the company that you are running wants to do drones, you have to do like it has to be REOC certified as well. So that means we have to prove that we can do that we can do the safety manuals and all that sort of stuff.
Sure. Now,
Yeah. So
is there a main primary test to be a pilot, and then are there additional certifications that you have to get to, like, fly at night or fly in the different kinds of airspace?
um, different. Yeah, you can't fly at night. You
Right.
can't fly at airspace controlled
Right.
spaces.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
but why I'm saying that is because here at the FAA, you can get certified
Mm.
to fly at night. You can have that happen. But
No.
there's a special, I think there's a special additional uh safety measure certificate or something you have to get. And as well as, like, I've flown in airspace of Wright Patterson Air Force Base, and I have to call for a waiver, and I have to, like, obviously the day of, I have to submit for it, give them all my information, and then I basically give them the day, and then during that day, the time of the flight, I have to call them 24 hours ahead of time, let them know my latitude, longitude, my point of launch, basically, and then what's my my radius of my flight, what is the elevation that I plan on flying, and basically then the day of, 30 minutes before you launch, you call the tower, which we did. We called the tower at the military installation, and we just basically gave them the details again, and they said, okay, give us a call here when you have finished your operation. So I don't, that's why I'm sure that there's different kind of, regulations, everybody, in terms of airspace and stuff. So I was just trying to maybe educate you a little bit about the FAA But I find it quite fascinating, and it was really kind of fun thinking like, oh wow, I get to fly in the airspace of a military installation, and they're trusting me. And we did that. What we did was we actually did scanning of the horticulture, or basically watching a woman was, um, believe it or not, they used to walk in to these areas in person and take some pictures or sketch out, various things that they saw. And it's basically trying to see if there's any invasive species and see how the environment around us, the particular protected areas is going. So, what are you hoping to achieve in geospatial science in the near future? Because
Yeah.
I like you first. Give
Mm-hmm.
me your take on, and for listeners, right? Let's educate some listeners.
Mm-hmm.
What is geospatial science? What's like? How would you describe
It's
that?
basically like, location, also basically to do with mapping, and also basically to do with cartography as well. So all different kinds of things. But then also it's about surveying as well. So people who used to call them the guys with theodolites,
Yeah.
now they're guys with EDMs and professional survey grade drones.
Mm,
They're the ones who do the basic mapping. So before all the other construction people come in, which is the civil engineers and also the guys that do other kinds of stuff like structural engineers as well. So there's a whole heap of what we do
mm-hmm,
as professionals where we do the foundational work before everyone else,
mm-hmm. Now,
especially when it comes to the construction industry, especially when it comes to urban planning as well. Yeah.
yeah, I was curious on, do you enjoy? I mean, do you enjoy both on on site flight operations, and the process of getting that data and working with it via computers and programs, or do you like one more than the other? I was curious.
I mean, a little more to do with the office work than the outside work, but I still like both anyway.
Okay.
Because number one, I don't really like sitting down for too long, and number two, you can't even get more vitamin D as you work.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
just it's so much better doing it that way.
Okay.
And being able to do these things is quite good because we in the early days of human society, we didn't of course sit down all day. We actually stood up as well. So
Sure. Sure.
um, it's part of health to actually do that. It's unfortunate that these days health issues are becoming to rise because of us sitting down a little more because of
Right. And I would tell you.
our new technologies coming these days.
I would tell you,
Mm,
as a fitness professional, you're exactly right. We're leading more sedentary lifestyles.
mm,
We were not designed, we're like dogs. We're not designed to sit in a typical
mm.
chair that we're sitting in right now.
Yeah.
We were either designed to be up, walking, running and chasing down game so we can eat it,
Hmm.
um, or squatting around a campfire to cook that food, and or laying down and sleeping. So,
Yeah.
have you ever heard this statement, Ian? Sitting is the new smoking.
Never had.
Okay, if you Google it, sitting is the new smoking. The physiological negative effects with sitting, excessive sitting, is much as detrimental as smoking.
Mm,
That's how much it is debilitating and leading to everything from diabetes, but even more so structural imbalances of the body. And then
mm,
once you can't operate that body in a very basic functional capacity, then you're going to push it through and get things done in a not so great situation. And what we have is there's no such thing as perfect posture, right?
Yep.
But there is something very much called postural dysfunction, which means there's so many potential gross imbalances in the body's skeletal makeup that people are literally wearing out their joints sooner than they need to and causing all kinds of potential calamity, maladies and kind of a cascading effect. Now, why should people be involved in competitions? Like you mentioned, I think when we spoke before we started the podcast, I think you talked about some competitions, but why do you think people should be involved in competitions and in networking opportunities?
Yeah, so I'm most involved in competitions and opportunities, but it's also a way to grow, right? So some competitions I did win, like in 2018, I went to the Esri UC conference representing Australia in probably, you know, as the young scholar, which is more about how we can utilize drones for landslides.
Oh,
And yeah, that's right. But then there were also other competitions which I was involved in during the pandemic, where we won. I with another team won an award, which is basically allowing, like it's like a we were creating a platform concept where we get young people from different countries of ASEAN and Australia to actually we went third place on that one, and basically we wanted people to connect on social projects virtually during that pandemic. And
mm-hmm.
once that's done, they, in their home countries, they basically work on that social cause. Can be like poverty, can be like homelessness, can be like all these kinds of social issues
Oh, it's
that
fantastic.
are taking place.
It's
And
fantastic.
also another competition where we were the local council, or should I say the local government, which is not, I don't say federal government or state government, but I'd say the local government, which is serving a few suburbs. I also created like a spatial solution on where the most waste issues happen. So this is basically like what we wanted to do was we wanted people who spoke a language other than English to use that app prototype to actually
Oh, great.
be able to showcase how we can minimize waste, we can reduce waste through that platform, and educating these people who spoke a language other than English about which waste should go to which bin. So like I think in the US is no different. Like this general waste should go in the red bin. This recycled waste should go to the yellow bin, etc., etc. So being able to get to that market would actually help in terms of improving that sustainability. And we won
Right.
that hackathon, and
Good for you.
also being able to get involved in different kinds of opportunities. You meet people, and even more recently, even though we didn't win the Hong Kong that spatial competition, which I did with another person who I met from that Esri UC conference, who also won an award from representing Hong Kong back in 2018, and also the guy who I met over LinkedIn during the pandemic, who I've also worked with in other competitions, which I've just mentioned.
Yeah.
Even though we were all award winners, we didn't win, but what was really important was, for me in particular, was about how we can utilize those steep slope spaces for recreational purposes for their children and their future grandchildren, etc., etc. So
Sure.
what I'm trying to say here is winning or losing to me doesn't really matter. I mean,
Yeah.
I do what I can. Of course, I still do what I can to have that winning mindset. But of course, if I don't win, uh, I learn something either whether I win or I don't win, because at the end of the day, I'd rather be a loser than a quitter. If I become a quitter, if I become a quitter, if I become a quitter, I don't gain anything.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's just like, when you mentioned athletes before and that endeavor, and you put your mental health near, your state of mind, you're feeling right, you're applying yourself. You need to, right, uh, get out there. Without risk, there is no reward, right? And
Mm,
try again. And you hit the nail ahead exactly. Um, the whole idea that, listen, you got to go ahead and explore,
mm,
participate, and believe me, I myself included, and I've had guests on. They mention, and this is to go toward the inspiring young lives. It's like, listen, everybody has a lack of confidence at times or doubt in their capabilities, right? But just know, I mean, for me, it's an important message on two levels. Number one, it's just important to put yourself out there and believe that you are special, and no matter where you come from and how you got to where you are, there's always more. And to realize that there are nuggets of gold in each one of us. Sometimes those nuggets are harder to discover than others. But and that's what I'm hoping that this podcast actually does, Ian, is support the idea, encourage both people that have had experiences, young or old, to, like you mentioned, right, giving back, helping another, realizing this is just not about winning. It's about society in general, giving us all opportunities to betterment, and know that, to have courage is what you just said. Don't quit.
mm,
You have courage. If you don't quit, no matter fail or succeed, you just keep moving forward. And life, as you know, I'm sure at this young age, life is about change. And there's a certain amount of adaptation. We have the benefit as our species compared to most animals, right? As a human species, we've gotten really good at creating an environment for us to make us better and more productive, safe, and all that, as opposed to having to adapt to your environment. Like, we know species of animals that we see all around us, that when we change their environment for us, how it affects
mm.
their capabilities, because they're either going to adapt or they're going to die. So now, that being said, what advice would you offer to a person interested in mentoring, either, young or old?
I just say, do what you can, because it's all about being in the present moment. You don't think about what's going to happen in the future. You don't think about what's going to happen in the past.
Exactly.
And there's also another thing is, with one of my my principal, who's still the principal today in John Monash Science School, Mr. Peter Corkill,
Mm-hmm.
was always talking to people. I mean, the students are predominantly Asian, but he was just basically telling students, you have to have balance of what you do, not only just in academic, but things like playing sports, playing music,
Sure, your health.
that
Yes.
would thrive. Because what I see in these days is
Mm-hmm.
people, they get burned out when in their career or in their studies, that
Sure.
they don't get an opportunity to do other things that matter in their life, like family, looking after the family, or
Right.
being able to play music, or play sports with others. And
Sure.
I really think if you have this opportunity to make time for these things, create social connection, because now, also coming back to what I talked about, opportunities. I met this other guy who was the young scholar from New Zealand. Now he's finished his PhD on loneliness. Now that loneliness is being a WHO epidemic, I've always encouraged people to connect with each other, no matter what happens, because
like we're doing now.
yeah, like what we're doing right now. How about that? So being able to connect through extracurricular activities. So when you're in uni, you want to find a life partner, or you want to
Right,
make
exactly.
friends,
Yeah.
you can go to like some religious groups, entrepreneurial groups, leadership groups,
Sure.
also cultural groups.
Now let me ask you. So, what was the gentleman's name again from New Zealand?
His name's Daniel Sukalim,
Okay. Now
and
he's a friend of yours?
yes, he's a friend of mine. I mean,
Okay.
whenever I go to Sydney, I come see him. Yeah.
Okay, Ian, I'm going to ask you a particular mission. I've got a couple comments here. Number one, I want you to make sure that you let him know about this podcast and that I would love to have him on as a guest. Number one.
Right.
Number two, when you talk about balance, and I'm not sure if you saw closely if you had a chance to even see, like, look at in my podcast or my logo, but my moniker is, my name's Greg Jankowski. I've been a fitness professional for over 30 years, and I train fitness professionals because I'm a balance specialist. So my moniker is I'm the balance professor.
Yeah.
But when I told you my essence is an artist, my passion is fitness. I both write, I swim, I ride bikes, I play tennis, I actually play the drums, I sing. So you hit it right on the nail of the head, where that arts, culture, food, right, science, the getting out and being social, one thing COVID showed us, right? We were already, I think the world with the technology in the developed countries, we're already heading to a world of being more isolated because we could. And it didn't keep us, like, before COVID, it didn't keep us from going out and meeting people. It just changed the dynamic of what we perceive as how we meet people, or how the world was supposed to live. It's more convenient. So it takes effort. And I applaud you on that awareness. I would love to have your friend on as a guest. So I'm going to put that on you. I try to put that on every one of my guests too.
I'll see what I can do about that.
Okay. It's only an hour of his time, and we're only going to spread the love around the world as much as we can. And if you know anybody that has a podcast that you think that would have any interest in having me as a guest, I'd love to. Because this whole process, Ian, goes back to that nuggets. A lot of people, when I interview them, sometimes they go, well, why would you want to interview me? Well, no, you got a cool job, or you have an interesting story, and there's a nugget in every conversation. So, and I really don't know where this podcast is going exactly, but the podcast is called Imagine Fitting In, and it's about the idea that we need to all have confidence about who we are, and to be able to be respectful enough to realize to take care of yourself. As you mentioned, giving back, and this is my idea of my contribution. I started being in fitness because I wanted to help people. I was tired of selling things and advertising I didn't believe, like, really bad food and cigarettes and alcohol and just prescription drugs. So that proactive. So again, I think everybody has a nugget to be shared. I thank you so much for spending time with us today. And I think that you're off and running. I think you're going to have a very successful life in all aspects of your world. It's truly a privilege to, you are definitely my longest distance virtual guest.
Thank you.
Previous, I think it was maybe, I don't know, it's California. But anyway, it's just really a privilege. I want you to do me a favor and tell your mom and dad that I'm 61, I'm about their age. Tell them good job, and they did a great job to date, and I'm sure they're going to be even more proud of you in the future. So it's been a really pleasure having you on as a guest. And you have any parting thoughts or anything you want to share?
I always would say to people, just when they can, get a mentor, because a mentor would basically help them accelerate in their career and in their life. Like probably even shorten it down to 1 or 2 years of accelerated growth. So if you look at the Sir Cobb book of Mastery by Robert Greene, you all should read that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll take that nugget, Ian, which I believe is not the only one of this conversation that potentially someone can get out of this conversation. So thank you again, Ian. I appreciate your time. You let me know via email if your guys has any potential interest, and I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Now it's early in the morning over there now, right?
Yes, it's early in the morning.
What time is it?
7:56 a.m.
7:56 a.m. It is 5:56 p.m. over here, and I'm a day behind you, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. All right. Well, let me know if there's anything I need to look for if you experience it today. No, I'm kidding. So I'm all behind you. But anyway, take care, and please be in touch with your guy. All right. So thank you so much, Ian. Take care. All right, listeners, another great episode, and with Ian Darmawan, drone pilot, geospatial guy, and we have to watch for him in the future. All right, guys, kids, till next time.
Professor!